I'm Ash.
I'm Al.
We are Lobby Cosplay.
And this is Shit Cosplayers Say. We will be doing part 2 of Secret Door. So if you are one of our listeners who are listening backwards, you will want to go and listen to part 1 before you listen to part 2. Because we do in fact have people who listen backwards.
Don't tell me how to live my life.
I do that with some podcasts too, though, to be perfectly honest, because they just load into my podcast feed and then I accidentally listen to them out of order.
Yes, it happens. So, what's new?
I got my paint for Oogie Boogie in.
That's fine.
So I tried out Lit, which is by... The website is Hustle Culture, and the paint's by the guy who, made The Blackest Black.
Is it Blackest Black or is it Black 2.0?
Well, he's also made Black 2.0. It's Stuart Stemple made...
Stuart Stemple!
Yes. So Stuart Stemple made The Blackest Black, has now an entire different line of paints, including this paint called Lit.
Can we go put Lit on the bean?
Can we put Lit on the bean? Oh, that would look cool.
I know. And
on
it
the
would
Chicago
piss
bean?
off Anish Kapoor. It would make him mad.
Anish Kapoor is not allowed to use this paint.
Good.
If you do not know the story about Blackest Black and Stuart Semple and Anish Kapoor, you should look it up because it's hilarious.
I think we've talked about it before.
I think we have talked about it, but a friend of mine recommended this Lit paint because one of the issues with Oogie Boogie is I didn't really want to have to deal with relying on blacklight to get some of these effects that I wanted to work, because at con that can be really unpredictable.
Lighting at con in general is super unpredictable. So even if you have black lights built into your costume, just depending on how good or bad the lighting is and what they can do with it, you may or may not be able to see the blacklight effect, even if you have a black light on your paints.
So one of my friends recommended Lit, which will charge in any kind of light and will remain charged for up to 8 hours if you give it a good charge beforehand. And I was like, there's no way. It's just acrylic paint. Okay, but I'm going to try it because at least the color looks like what I want it to look like for Oogie Boogie. So I did some tests, and I don't think I mixed it quite right to start with. It's traditional acrylic, so you have to use a base and then a powder and actually mix them together. And I think I used too much base and not enough powder. So it was kind of watery. But after about 10 layers on these plastic bugs, and I put them in the light, and then they were only in the light for maybe 5-6 minutes. Even in a room with ambient light, they were still glowing like crazy.
So what you're saying is we're just going to leave your costume in the bathroom with the lights on all day.
Yes, because they will charge both in natural but also fluorescent and LED and any other kind of light too. So they're not, and it's not relying on black light to work, which is what I liked about it, because I didn't really want to wire all these black lights into Oogie Boogie and then have it completely fail. This way, we're not reliant on electronics. This paint should work, even if I would have to sit backstage somewhere with a flashlight and recharge myself periodically. It should theoretically work. There's a video of my test run on Lavi Cosplay on our Instagram of what the paint looks like. It's not quite the look I'm going for with the green. I want the green bugs to be more fully green because they're going to be under some chiffon. So I really need them to show up, but I will probably paint the pink ones this way. So I did a black undercoat because typically fluorescents look really nice with a black background as opposed to a white. However, for these, I probably should have used a white because I really wanted that just matte green.
Yeah.
However, the effect was cool because when they glowed, you really see the details of the bugs.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to do that for the pink, which are the bugs on the outside of the costume. But then for the green, I need to do a white base and then put the green on top.
That's why we test things.
But this paint is really freaking sweet. And it's not insanely expensive. I think the container of powder was $12. And it'll go a long way. It's a decent sized container. Where you would expect this to be $30 or $40. And it's not, because Stuart Semple wants people to be able to use it. He doesn't want it to be outpriced for the regular person. So if you really need a really intense black or really intense pink, they have the pinkest pink and the blackest black, including Blackest Black 2.0. Sponsor us.
He can't because he made his paint so affordable that
That's right. We are in no way, shape, or form sponsored by Hustle Culture or Stute Semple. I just wanted to make it known that this paint is pretty sweet. And we're going to be able to do a lot, both with Oogie Boogie, and then if we ever need a set for this, I think we'll be able to do a lot with this paint as well. It's kind of sweet. I like the fact that I'm not going to have, like, that it's going to glow even, like, in the hallway, which is cool. Like, it just retains, like, a sense of glow, even if you're in light.
Can you imagine, though, like, not that we would do this because body paint, but, like, if we went into, like, a rave or something at a con?
I would be glowy.
With your glowy costume.
Right? I mean, I could. Because it does react to black light. Like, the paint does react to black light. It's just not dependent on black light.
Yeah.
So it will react outside of black light, which is what I was going for. Because even when you get black light reflective paint, it's not always reliable. So sometimes it's like you need a certain amount of light, and there's really not a great way to control that inside a costume.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely no good way for me to control that outside of the costume.
No.
Because I was not sure how I was going to light the bugs on the outside of the dress if I was using black light. It was only going to work on the bugs on the inside. So they were the only ones that were going to glow But now all my bugs can glow.
All of your bugs can glow.
I can be a glowy, buggy thing. I never thought I'd order a bag of 200 plastic bugs, though.
I mean...
The things you order for cosplay.
Uh?
And the bag is really gross because they're relatively realistic, and I struggle with this bag of bugs.
That's super fun.
Some of them are not big enough. I'm going to have to order more bugs. They're a lot smaller than I thought. But they're really gross. And I'm going to need to get, like, a spray primer because having to hold and paint them was, like, weirding me out. I was like, I don't like this. Because, like, the spiders don't look real, but the centipedes and the cockroaches do.
So what you're saying is we'll just save the tiny bugs and we'll set them aside. And then if we need them, if we ever do a set piece for this, then they'll just have to be incorporated that way.
Stick them. Well, I have tiny bugs that I have to put in places. Some of them are really tiny.
It's
like they're not probably going to get seen if I put them on things, but we'll see. Because there's a bug that's a hair clip on the art. There's little bugs all over.
You can just embellish your costume with more bugs instead of rhinestones.
I don't need rhinestones. I have bugs.
More bugs. More bugs.
My bugs. My bugs. Yes, instead of rhinestones on this costume, I will embellish it with neon bugs.
This sounds like a great plan.
I mean, I can't promise there won't also be rhinestones on this costume somewhere.
With your, like, muslin-y, burlap-y looking
I think
fabrics.
The snake needs rhinestone eyeballs.
I mean, that could be a thing.
Because there's a Tim Burton snake on Oogie Boogie's arm, the black and white snake.
Because, of course, there is.
Yeah. Well, because I decided to just order rubber bugs and a rubber snake instead of casting all of these, because I was kind of like, why would I do that?
Work smart, not hard.
Yeah, I'm going to have to completely alter all of these anyway. They're just a base for, like, what I want to do. But for the amount of them that I'd have to make, casting them myself was going to be insane amount of money.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm just going to buy plastic bugs and then completely redo all of them.
I mean, that sounds smart.
It's working so far. Well, and they don't weigh anything, because they're the rubber, like, toy bugs. So they don't weigh anything, which is would have been the other hard part about doing it at home.
Yeah.
Is the silicone would have weighed a lot more. I do have one where I might have to make it because technically I can't tell if it's a stitch or a bug on her face. It could be a centipede or it could be a stitch. A centipede would be cooler. So I might have to make a latex mold of one of the centipedes so that I can attach it to my face, because I don't think that the rubber bugs are skin safe. So I probably would want to make a latex one. But that would be kind of fun to try, so.
Yeah, that would be a little bit of a fun.
Because I should be able to make a mold and then pour latex in and get a bug. Or buy a mold and pour latex in and get a bug.
Bug.
So I can actually, because I won't be putting the bugs directly on my skin because I'm going to do a bodysuit. So everywhere else that there's bugs, they're just getting attached to a bodysuit. So I don't have to.
Can do great gluing and sewing things.
Yeah, there's a lot of E6000 fabric fusion in my future.
Yeah.
For bugs. The snake will be removable. The snake will probably snap in place because it's big. Yeah, I'm doing either a bodysuit or glove dance tight combo something because she's got a green pallor to her skin, and I do not want to make up all of that.
No, that sounds miserable.
So I will do a skin tone something and then put green on top because I want that more like mossy decaying look.
Yeah.
And not just like flat green.
Right.
Because it's Oogie Boogie, so I
Makes
want
sense.
more of that like mossy decaying look to it. So lots of glowing bugs in my future under my chiffon lining of things. Because my hood's going to be covered in them on the inside.
As it should be.
I have a lot of little green bugs in my future. My bugs!
Yes.
It's my favorite thing to have to say. My bugs!
Well, and frankly, like, you like all the little tedious detail work anyway, so the fact that you get to, like, alter hundreds of bugs is,
this costume
I'm sure
is
it's
right
very
up my
therapeutic.
alley.
It's very therapeutic.
Because the sewing part is not hard. Like, it's really not. I've had to, do some conceptualizing because the lining has to be different than the outer portion to get the bubble to work. And for just, if I want to do gloves, I'm going to essentially need something to attach them to or they'll slide down. So, like, I have to, my undersleeve is different than my oversleeve and that kind of thing. But, like, the technical sewing part of this costume is extremely simple.
Right.
Like, there's no real crazy techniques I have to go on. I do have to figure out how I want to have a finished seam that's not finished for the slices in the dress. How I want to make sure that those don't unravel more. But yeah, there's not a lot of like technical sewing. It's a lot of finishing and dyeing and painting and the stuff that I prefer to do over sewing. Which is why she's a nice break from Hinoto, because Hinoto's all sewing and it makes me cry.
Yes.
She's literally all sewing. Although I did start stitching white wefts into her base wig. So I started doing something on her. Kind of have to finish Oogie Boogie first now because I have a photo shoot in October.
Because now you have a deadline.
I do. It's nice to have a deadline.
It's different.
But now that I kind of know how to use this paint, I'm hoping I can get rolling, painting some bugs, and
that's fun.
Figuring out how I want this dress to work. So we will hopefully have it for C2E2 if we hopefully go to C2E2.
Yeah. Christmas Con.
It's the plan.
It's your Christmas movie cosplay for Christmas Con.
Right? Nightmare Before Christmas for Christmas Con.
It's a good plan.
It is a good plan.
It's a good plan. So I did think of another update that we did not talk about last episode.
Oh, what's that?
They have officially postponed the International Cosplay League to 2022.
That's right. We are now Team 2022.
Yep. Gotta put that post-it note on there.
I did.
Good.
I did.
Preemptively.
So I think we are now officially the longest running international team ever.
We can just make that
at this point,
running.
Probably for ICL, because the poor WCS team is right up there with us.
Yep.
As far as delays are concerned. The C4 team is a different team now. So they were not 2020, but they are 2021. So hopefully in 2022, we will be going to Spain. We are changing everything, so stay tuned.
Yes. Because we're bored.
That's how far I've gotten. I ordered fabric. I never thought I'd order that many saris in my entire life, but I have.
I'm very proud of you.
I know, it's beautiful and I can't wait.
Yeah, look at how far in advance you're working.
By the time this comes out, they might be here because it's supposed to show up in August.
Oh, well, maybe.
I have to base everything else that I do off of whether or not these saris work, so they had to come first.
Work smart, not hard.
Work smart, not hard. But yeah, we're gonna bring you at least one costume that's been on the books for eons.
Ever.
Yes, so you'll have. I'm very excited to finally play this character. So
yes,
it's gonna be. I don't know if this is a good idea or not to unleash that side, but
we've been talking about you cosplaying this character, I think, since 2015.
Oh, at least. But we've always been worried about the danger that'll occur if you allow me to embody this character. So we're gonna see what happens. I'm gonna need an entourage. That's all I know.
It's gonna be a good time.
It's gonna be a great time.
Yep.
I'm gonna have fun with it. I don't know about everybody else.
Oh goodness.
I'll have a good time.
But yeah, so that's where we're at. Oh, and I've also looked at all of those Vancouver conventions, and I've decided that Vancouver is a lot like Chicago.
Is it?
There's so many cons.
Are there really? Are they all in Vancouver? All the Canadian cons are in Vancouver?
No, not all the Canadian cons, but I went on animecons.com, and of course, they have the function to search by like region and the year. So I just looked at all the cons between like 2019, when we like our last real year of cons, and what's been scheduled between then and now. And there are so many, which a lot of them, granted, are just like 1 days, but they have so many events in Vancouver, and I believe like Richmond, North Vancouver, and Burnaby were all like suburb areas, I guess you would call it. If you were like, if we're talking about like Chicago, like we include all like the Schaumburg and the Rosemonts and everything, because it's all like one big city that runs into each other. So there weren't too many BC cons that weren't in this like city cluster. Like there was like an offshoot over in Victoria and another one, and I believe it was Kelowna had another one, but all the rest of them were either in Vancouver or a city that you could conveniently access by driving from Vancouver.
See, the only one I knew about was Fan Expo Vancouver.
I mean, that one is there, yes. But there are more.
That's the big one.
They were supposed to have a Sailor Moon Con.
What?
Yeah, I know.
What?
It's called the Crystal Millennium Convention.
What?
I know, they scheduled it 2 years in a row, but now it's on hold because of COVID.
I want to go to that convention.
I know, right?
I want to go to the Sailor Moon convention. What?
Well, and also Anime Evolution, which is one of Canada's oldest cons, is also in Vancouver, including they've got Evolution, and then they also host, I think, 2 one-day events a year through their nonprofit. But yeah, there's so many events.
I had no idea there were so many events in Vancouver.
I didn't either.
Vancouver, if you want us to come hang out with you, give us suggestions on which convention we should look at, because now I'm curious.
There were 14 separately named events that I came up with in the BC area scheduled between 2019 and like 2022.
That's a lot of events in Canada.
I know,
in one
right?
place. But it is like Chicago.
It is. Well, and if you figure only 2 of those were not in the greater Vancouver area, so you got 12 events. It's like Chicago.
Yeah, that's very much like Chicago.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Kind of how that rolls.
So many events. But yeah, so let us know what's good in the BC area.
Yeah, we're curious. I mean, I'm still all team Anime North because that was a great time.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm very curious now about Vancouver.
But Ontario's like opposite end.
Well, yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
I know Toronto and Vancouver are nowhere near each other.
No, they are not.
We come also from a country where everything is drastically spaced out, and we understand that things are not next to each other.
Yeah, it's like Detroit to Seattle.
Yeah.
More or less.
Yeah, like I get that. I get that. Which is why I was really confused when I realized all our downloads were coming from Vancouver and not Toronto.
Right. Because you're like, wait a second, I didn't do a con here.
But those were coming before we did the con, so I still want to know. Like, you may have told us by now, because we're recording all of these in the same day, but because we're marathon recording
Work
before
smarter,
we
not
get
harder.
too busy.
And I'm off work today, so
That's right.
you know.
We both don't
It's
have
good.
work today, so we're marathon recording.
It's good. Vancouver, let us know. What's the good cons in your area? If you know a good con that like skits in your area, let us know.
Well, because in some cases, Vancouver is closer than some of the places in the States.
Oh, yeah.
So, like,
Well,
it's not a big deal for us to go to Canada.
Plenty of things are close if you have a passport and an airport. So
Yeah, but when you're from the Midwest, you think you can drive.
I am not driving to Vancouver, British Columbia. That's not a thing.
We talked about driving to Toronto.
A much more reasonable drive.
I think it was 13 hours to Toronto.
That's you. To be fair, I think you talked about driving to Toronto.
Well, you're in the Midwest, and if it's like under like 20 hours, you might as well just drive, right?
No, that's not what that means.
No, I don't like doing anything. If it's over like 8, then I don't like to drive.
I know. Like, Colossal Con's really like my limit for
Colossal Con
wanting
pushes
to
it
spend
for me.
time in the car. And
Yeah.
that's only like 6.
Yeah, I have an adult job. I'd rather pay to have the airplane fly me or take the
Yes.
train.
Yeah.
Because they do
Because
like
neither of those are
train.
probably going to save you any time, but you'll be able to.
Is that so?
A third co-host wants to tell you about it.
He would like to take the train.
He says that, but neither of those are going to save you any time. They might cost you more money. It just kind of depends. But if you consider the fact that you don't have to drive and you can like read or sleep or watch movies or
Speaking
not
of time
so,
and money,
because there is none of that on the train.
speaking of time and money,
Yes.
let's go back to our part 2 of our judging episode now that we've babbled for like 20 minutes at y'all. You haven't had our tangents for a long time because we've had literally nothing to talk about.
I know, because there hasn't been anything going on. For those of you that joined us before, we'll recap. And for those of you that are listening backwards and chose not to go back to part 1, we're going to kind of do the TLDR version for you of the topics that we covered last time. So the first one was, why are you not wearing a fancy costume to judge? The second was, don't panic over areas that your judges cannot see. They only know what you tell them. Your presence and stage performance can affect your score. So we're talking about presentation, not like skits. Contests are about who actually shows up to the contest. Just because you lose does not mean that you did a bad job. It is okay to win, but it is not okay to be an asshole.
So on the subject of time and money, our next topic is that good judges don't give a shit about how much money or time you actually spent on your costume. We don't care.
We really don't care.
We don't care. I care about what your costume looks like. I don't care that you spent $5,000 or that you spent like 200 hours. I don't care. Because time is irrelevant in quality of costume.
Well, like, especially now because of the pandemic, a lot of people are like, oh, how long did this take you to make? And someone's like, oh, it took me, a year. And they're like, oh, wow, you put a lot of hours in it. And you're like, no, I just binge watched like all 10 seasons of Stargate while I was making it. Like,
or you have someone like me who's extremely slow. So, I can say, oh, I spent 2 years on this costume, but my neighbor over here might be able to make this costume in half the time and the quality isn't any different.
So one of the things that came across my feed recently that I think is really important on this particular topic, I believe UK contestant for the last in-person C2E2 Crown Championships of Cosplay actually spent less than 50 pounds on their entire costume.
Wow.
Yes. It was that big golden bird with the LEDs in it.
Oh, that thing was cool.
Yeah, the thing was cool. I had to go look whenever they said that, because it came up in a thread on Facebook, and they're like, "Oh yeah, this and that," and I was like, "What? Which costume was this?" Because of course I'm a contest junkie, and if I can stream it, I want to watch it. And I'm just like, "That's amazing!" But they used like one-offs and imperfect materials, recyclables, and everything. And I want to say originally they only spent maybe 30 pounds on it, and then after they got chosen to be the UK representative, they went ahead and got some super cheap LEDs and put in it so that it lit up, but still spent maybe 50 pounds total on the whole thing.
Yeah, because that was a puppet, wasn't it?
It was gorgeous. So I believe their arms were its arms, but it had they wore just black pants, and then the legs stuck out in front of it, but it looked gorgeous. I saw it in the hallway, and I saw the videos and the photos of it, obviously, but we saw it when we were just walking around a little bit, and I'm like, that is really cool.
Yeah, it was stunning. It was really neat.
It was super neat. I'm going to find them, and we will link them in the comments as a shout out, because
yeah, as you look, I'll keep talking.
Do it.
I'm sure you'll be able to find who they are soon. And I lost my train of thought. Yeah, money, if you're smart, isn't going to be any big thing for your costume. There are some situations of pay to play with competitions, which we'll probably cover at another time. But like, I still remember when we were able to do all of Helios and Princess Lady for under $200 because we got Groupons for the textile discount outlet in Chicago and took home giant garbage bags full of fabric. And in that $200 wasn't just Princess Lady and Helios either. We had like fabric for other projects too.
Yeah, we got not just fabrics for that. It was rhinestones, and I think there were maybe parts of like six different costumes in there.
I think total those costumes. I mean, your wig cost more than your entire dress.
Yes, it did. The wig for Princess Lady was probably the single most expensive piece out of that
Princess Lady's wig and supplies was about $100.
Yeah. And one with the rest, so it cost more than pretty much everything else combined.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that the two costumes otherwise probably were not even close to that because I had Helios's wig and we did wholesale fabrics. Oogie Boogie, not going to cost a whole heck of a lot because of what I'm using to put her together. Doesn't mean she's any less than someone who made it with like really expensive materials. So like, if you walk into a judging room and you're going to go, I spent $3,000 on my costume, we're really not going to care. Like, there is some thing to say about, like, quality of fabrics, but that doesn't necessarily mean you need to spend, like, crazy money, depending on how you plan. But as far as saying the amount in a judging room, it's not going to help your score. A lot of cons do ask for time. I wish they didn't. Because, again, inexperienced judges may be impressed by how much time you spent. Especially if you have judges who don't craft, which does happen on occasion. They may be really impressed by how much time you spent on a costume piece, but time doesn't equate to quality. So don't worry about it so much. I usually will tell judges when they ask me, yeah, I don't know, on and off for about a year. I'm slow in crafting, so it takes me a while to do things. I wouldn't worry about time or money all that much. Do you know who the bird cosplayer was?
So it comes up on Instagram under Callie_McLeod. I know that they have I believe they have a different name for their Facebook page, but we will find it and then link it in the description.
That works.
We will search later. So, but yeah, time, money, quality.
Quality is what I care about.
It's a contest, so quality is what's important over anything else. The rest of it is just kind of...
Because I also don't care that you did your costume piece in, like, the night before the con either.
Well, yes, please tell me about how you have poor planning skills.
Because likelihood is we're going to be able to tell.
and that you rushed it. Like... Thanks for letting me know that you rushed it.
Like, that's not necessarily impressive either.
Right. To be fair, I do know some people that can rush costumes and do a really good job, but then you wonder, you're like, okay, but how much better would it have been if you would have taken your time?
Well, exactly. I think probably the big thing that competitors do not realize is about judges is that regardless of where we are in the United States, we all know each other and we talk.
Yeah. Like, if I don't know somebody directly, I bet I know somebody that knows somebody.
The pool of judges in the United States is surprisingly small.
Yes.
And if we don't know each other due to judging, we probably know each other as competitors because the master's pool of competitors is also relatively small.
For people that continue competing and participating after they hit masters.
So you have to realize that just because someone, say, is judging a competition in Minnesota doesn't mean that they also might not show up in, like, Florida. It can happen. We know people who are all over the country judging different contests. We've had that happen to us where we've had, like, somebody in Wisconsin and then someone show up in Minnesota and they're like, what? It's the same people.
I had that happen to me at a con, like, 2 or 3 hours away from another con where someone's like, oh, it's you. I'd be like, yeah, I live here.
Yeah.
It's really not that weird.
But we do talk to each other. We do check in with each other. And if we know that a problematic person is going to XYZ con, we may warn the contest coordinator or one of the judges about it.
Well, and that's the other thing, too, is that contest coordinators talk.
Oh, yeah.
So they know who the judges are and they know who the competitors are. And if they don't have personal experience with you, they probably know somebody that does.
Well, and if we know that Problem Child is coming to your con, we are definitely going to warn you about it.
Professional courtesy.
It's professional courtesy to be like, hey, just so you know, this person's coming to your con and they typically cheat, so you're going to want to look out. Because we do talk to each other. We do warn each other. We often work with each other in different parts of the country. So keep that in mind when you decide to be an asshole or you decide to cheat.
Yeah. We had one situation, I want to say it was fairly early on, and we were judging a contest. Just happened to be like eating lunch with somebody from a different convention chain, and they happened to mention seeing one of our competitors and mentioned how they had won Best in Show at their con like 11 months prior. And we're like, oh, well, they didn't disclose that. Isn't that interesting? To ourselves, obviously, but...
So then we had to go talk to the contest coordinators about it because they were probably going to get an award.
Could have.
Yeah.
But also, don't lie.
Yeah, don't lie.
Because I'm going to go out on a limb and say 99% of the time you don't qualify for novice if you won Best in Show with the same costume.
Yeah, probably not.
Just saying.
Well, we've also had, like, multiple repeat offenders that we've judged at so many cons with the same costume where their story changes each time.
I don't know if they forget.
I think
or
they
if it's
forget.
Like they don't recognize us in different costumes. I don't know.
I don't know, but like we all talk to each other, so we all know that these things are happening, especially with interregion. Like,
yeah.
Everybody's gonna know. So I don't know who you think you're fooling. But
well, and most of the time, like the awards, like there are some awards, like we talked about, like Colossal Con, for example, where they give out like really good prizes. But most of the time, it's just like not worth it.
Right.
Like I don't see the benefit of lying about costumes and trying to cheat for like DVDs from the vendor room.
Right. The other plus point, though, is, you know, it's good to know that judges do typically stick together. And so more experienced judges are more than willing to help out those of you that are new to the game.
Yes.
I highly recommend the Cosplay Contest Support Group on Facebook.
Yes.
There are a lot of very experienced judges on there, and everybody is more than happy to share their knowledge with the new kids on the block. Because we all can't do this forever. We gotta nurture and bring up the new kids in this as well, so...
Well, and if you think about it, like if we nurture and help other people to become better judges, all that does is improve the community as a whole.
Exactly.
Including if we decide to compete, then, you know, the better the judges are everywhere, the better that our judging experience is going to be.
That's right. It's full circle. If you are a new judge and you have any questions, feel free to DM us or email us. We're more than happy to answer them.
You don't have to be a new judge. If you're an old judge, we're
Or
happy
an
to
old
answer
judge.
questions too. Because, you know, everybody can learn something new. We learn stuff every time we judge. So ultimately, you just put your best foot forward and do what you can. But
we're going to talk about probably the top question that occurs, and we're going to be as honest as we can about it. Although in most cases, your judges are great and qualified, there are cases where sometimes your judges just suck.
not everybody's perfect.
No.
And not everybody is cut out to be a judge.
Well, and I word it in this way because the phrase that you typically will hear from people is, my judges sucked. So what does that typically mean when a contestant says that?
It means that they're mad that they didn't win something.
A lot of the time it is they're mad that they didn't win something. When a more experienced competitor says their judges sucked, it usually comes down to a couple different things. And a lot of that will have to do with the professionalism of the judges.
Yeah. For me, it's usually the judging experience.
For us, if we were to ever say that, which we've never said that about any judges directly because that's unprofessional, it would have a lot to do with how they act professionally in the judging room and how our judging experience is. Were they doing what they're supposed to do as a judge? Are they getting up and asking us questions? Are they looking at our costumes, or are they just sitting there and kind of waiting for us to be done? Because then you're not actually judging.
Are they fully engaged with us and our interview process, or are they playing on their phone? I mean,
now, are there judges at conventions that are not qualified? Yes. Is that the fault of the judge? No. That is the fault of the contest coordinator.
So the problem you're going to run into at a lot of cons, and this isn't every con because every con is obviously different, is a lot of cosplay contest runners are not competitive cosplayers. So they've either never competed previously or they're not currently part of the circuit. So they don't necessarily understand the value of having qualified judges. And I would even extend that to emceeing, but that's not what this episode's about. And they don't necessarily understand what makes a quality judge.
I do understand that sometimes cosplay coordinators are in a tough spot and the convention will make them have the cosplay guests be judges. And when your cosplay guests are models who don't craft, they don't necessarily make the best judges. But I do understand that sometimes you get stuck in a hole for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's financial reasons, trying to limit the number of judges. Sometimes it's wanting to showcase that guest. But honestly, cons, you're wasting your guest if you have them sit in the room on Saturday all day judging a contest.
Yes, because then they're not interacting with your attendees.
Yeah, if you've got a big name cosplay guest, whether they're a crafter or a model, your attendees want to see that person. You do not want to trap them on Saturday, your biggest day of the con, in a judging room for 8 hours.
They should either be at their table interacting with attendees, or they should be running workshops or panels. They should not be stuck in a judging room literally all day on Saturday. That is not a good use of that resource.
DaishoCon actually does this well, and they give their famous cosplay guests a Judge's Choice Award that only happens during the competition. So the only time that they need to be present is during the actual competition. So it allows them to be there and be seen without being trapped for 8 to 10 hours. And I think that's a great middle ground for some of these big name guests.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Because that's really the hard part is if your coordinators aren't familiar with crafting and competing, they think that these big names are going to be a draw for the competition. And in a lot of cases, it's not unless they're really big crafters. So if you're going to have Can We Cosplay judging your cosplay contest, yeah, that might encourage people to show up. But if you've got a model cosplayer judging your cosplay contest, it's not going to encourage the big dogs to come out because they're like, well, why is this person judging my costume when they don't make anything?
Or they might make things, but they might not make things to a competition level. Because if I'm going to make something just to wear it for a photo shoot or to wear on the con floor for SNGs, it's completely different than making a big flashy competition set.
Well, and then there's the flip side too of coordinators and cons in general aren't always looking for quality. They're looking for free.
Yes.
So sometimes conventions will just take whoever is available who will do the job for free, which kind of goes along with the idea that just because a con is big doesn't mean they're going to have quality judges. That's a big misconception in general about contests, that the bigger the con, the better the contest is going to be. That is not always true. I know some pretty large contests that aren't so hot, or big cons that have contests that aren't so hot. But then there's some smaller contests where it's like, wow, this is a great one contest. And no one would ever know about it. So yeah, we love Colossal Con. That's a big dog, right? But then there's some smaller conventions like Anime St. Louis pays a lot of attention to getting really quality judges.
Yeah. Well, and I know when we first went to St. Louis, they were actually run by the local Costumers Guild chapter, and it was the best masquerade experience I think I've ever had.
Archon in St. Louis has one of the biggest reputations for having the best masquerade ever. And it's a sci-fi convention, but it's run by Sheila.
And
we love Sheila.
It's a fairly small sci-fi convention. I think they only have 2,000 to 3,000 people, but they have a huge super quality. Anybody that I know that has ever participated talks about how it's the best masquerade ever.
I know that NakaCon's a medium-sized convention. They pay a lot of attention to the quality of their judges. There's a lot of these smaller cons that actually do work really hard at making sure that the judging experience is great. Anime Fusion. Sorry, I know we're a little biased about Fusion, but Fusion pays a lot of attention to cosplay in general. But you would never know that this tiny con in Minnesota pays so much attention to the details of their cosplay competition. Like, there are times where we're sad that we can't compete because we know everyone that works there. Because it's just, they try so hard.
Yeah.
And it shows in the competitors that come each year and the response that you get from your competitors. It's a high quality competition at a very small convention.
The dedication of the staff really shows.
Yes. And that's what makes a really good competition a lot of times, is that staff dedication. But don't think just because this con is massive, it means that their competition's going to be better. The best way to figure out what you're going to deal with is look for video from the year before. That's going to tell you a lot about what the contest typically looks like. And you can always ask your contest coordinator who the judges are going to be.
Yeah.
They may not tell you, but you can ask.
They might not know.
They may
right
not
away,
know, because some contests wait till like last minute to pick their judges.
You could also consider just talking to other people that compete at that show. Some people will, jump in once and then be like, no, this isn't for me. But you're going to have some people that compete in the same region or the same contest year after year. Just ask them what their experience is like, and they should be able to give you a good idea. Like, everybody knows that cosplay contests run late. Well, how late does it really run? Like, what's the judging setup like? How much time do you normally get? Who do they usually pick? What's the MC like when they're on stage? Is it one of those people that really helps the contest, or is it one of those people that makes fun of the attendees and the competitors so that they can try to get a stupid joke across? I mean, there are so many different factors.
It's typically a good sign if you see master level cosplayers continually returning to a contest, because we don't like to waste our time.
You consider, like, so many cons out there, you can't sandbag. So if you've won an award, you cannot enter again. And there are some cons, it's not as prevalent in our region, but there are some cons out there that if you have competed in a costume before, that you are not allowed to rewear it. So repeating masters is definitely a good sign.
If you have suggestions for conventions that we should add to the "this is an awesome competition experience" list, please let us know, because we will legit start making an actual list so people know where the awesome cons are.
That would be kind of fun.
Right?
So, yes. Tell us where the awesome cons are and why, because I want to know.
I have heard, obviously we haven't gotten out of the Midwest much. I've heard good things about Otakon, both hallway and in their stage show. They're a little bit different. They've got like a legit hallway competition, but then they also have a masquerade. There's a few cons that do that as well. Yoma's was pretty decent. We didn't get to do their regular masquerade, but it seemed run really well.
And they give away a really big trophy.
They do give away a really big trophy. It's like a 7-foot trophy.
Right. Remember last time in part 1 when we were talking about, like, going to contests because of the prizes? I would 100% compete at YomaCon for their super tall trophy.
We forgot about competing at YomaCon for the 7-foot trophy. We're going to have to add that back on the list sometime. Just not when there's a snowstorm again.
Just not when there's a snowstorm.
Let's not do that. Let's not do that again.
Sounds like a poor choice.
Well, and in general, if you ever have a judging experience where you leave the room and you feel like you were ignored, belittled, or put down, that contest coordinator needs to know, because that's not acceptable. That is a legit sucky judge. And that does happen rarely, but sometimes it happens. Egos get in the way and things happen.
Or maybe they got forced to judge and they really didn't want to. I mean, there's so many different factors involved. There's no way for us to know why somebody had a bad experience specifically. If you do have a bad experience, get a hold of your coordinators, because they're the only ones that are really going to be able to do something about it. And it might not change anything for this particular year and probably won't. But going forward, if they know that Judge XYZ Cosplay or whoever is ignoring their contestants or making little snide comments or what have you, then the coordinator needs to know about it so that that person doesn't get asked back to judge in the future.
And those are our judging secrets that we have for all of you. If you have any follow-up questions to this, DM us, shoot us an email at podcastscs@gmail.com. We can always do a follow-up. If you new to judging peeps have some questions you'd like us to answer, shoot us an email or a DM. Maybe we'll be able to put something together for you. But now I miss judging. If you just had a really terrible judging experience somewhere and want to rant to us about it, feel free to send that in too. Please rant to us. We are more than happy to anonymously present anything during a listener's episode.
That's true.
Speaking of which, we are going to be starting to put together the 50th episode content, which we are calling Confessions. So if you have any deeply dark, out there confessions that you have for cosplay or conventions or otherwise, you can email them to us or DM them, or there is a Google form on our Facebook page if you want to be super anonymous. We are happy to do any of these anonymously. You just have to tell us. If you want credit, tell us, because more likely than not, we're probably going to present these anonymously because we're kind of hoping for some juicy material, let's be honest. We will be sharing our own confession during the 50th episode, so stay tuned as to what that's going to be. But if you have anything along those lines, feel free to send it in, as it will be part of our 50th episode, which will be our second to last episode of season 2. Good Lord. How did we get to almost 50 episodes?
We just kept swimming.
I guess so. So if you want to be part of the 50th episode, send your material in to us.
Do it. Do it.
We want your confessions.
It's true.
And we will give you ours, and it's a doozy.
Oh boy. This is one of those instances where you're like, we're never, ever, ever going to talk about this. And then you do.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it. We decided we should talk about it, so we're going to talk about it.
Anyway, that's enough about that.
That is.
I'm Ash.
I'm Elle.
We are Lavi Cosplay.
And this is Shit Cosplayers Say. You've been listening to Shit Cosplayers Say, an LVC production. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Podcast SCS. Our website is lavicosplay.com. Have a fun, crazy con or cosplay-related story, absurd cosplay question, or just something in general to share with us? Email us at podcastscs@gmail.com. Thank you for listening, and remember, just because you can doesn't mean you should.